Welcome back, Diogenites, to the fifth and final of our masterclass sessions here at Diogenes the Dog. We're going to cover 3 fortified and sweet wines in this session. 2 I picked for a slightly sort of geeky touch on sweet wine. First of all is our Malamado, a Malbec from Mendoza in Argentina. And next up we've got our Laborum, which is a late harvest, also Malbec, also from Argentina, but from really high altitude Salta. So this is a fortified sweet Malbec from Mendoza, where Mendoza are producing 70% of what's coming out of Argentina currently. And this is from Salta, some of the highest vineyards in the world. This in particular is, I think it's 1.6 kilometers in altitude and picked late harvest. So with your fortified wines, the way that we're making them sweet is interrupting fermentation by adding a high alcohol spirit into the mix. That high alcohol spirit completely stops fermentation in its tracks and it leaves over loads of residual sugar. So with your Malamado here and all fortified wines, where port is probably the most famous of all the fortified wines, we've got a really sort of sticky, sweet setup in your glass with loads of punch and loads of alcohol behind it. The addition of that alcohol stops the fermentation, leaving loads of natural leftover sugar behind in your fermentation. On the nose, super plummy. You can feel the fruit is really, really nice and ripe. It hasn't had too much oaking done to it. Whereas something like your late harvest here from really, really high altitudes turns out, if I remember well, a lot softer. With late harvest wines, picking later does leave more sugar in the grape, which means that you have more left over to play with after your fermentation, but it also leaves you with much lower acids, which is not a good thing because you want to salivate, you want to have this really juicy, ripe, fresh wine, and you don't want something that's super sticky and it's going to cloy to your gums and stick in your mouth. So the beauty of this particular wine, with it being so high altitude, is that your vines are really cool and fresh. The higher up you go, the lower down in average temps you get, which means naturally your acids are kept really high. So normally with your late harvest, they tend to be quite sort of sticky and sweet, but in this case, because you've got up in altitude, you've kept loads of acidity and freshness in that grape, that translates to your glass over here. So here we're super interesting. 2 Malbecs, both from Argentina, one that's fortified and sticky and really high in alcohol, and the other that's lighter, higher in acidity, picked later, but from a higher altitude to keep all the freshness in there. This Laborum is a much lighter, softer, more elegant affair, whereas your Malamado is sort of a big, stonking port type setup from Argentina. We're moving on now to one of, let's say, I'm not allowed to have favorites, but it's one of my favorite sweet wines, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce it. Any Polish people who are watching, you feel free to correct me. The Szlachetny Zbiór, which means noble harvest. It's 100% Solaris, which is, wow, super tropical on the nose. Solaris is a hybrid. We're growing a lot in the UK, or some in the UK. There's a lot that's growing in Eastern Europe. Your Solaris as a grape is perfect for colder climates. It's perfect for resisting mildew and fungus and all of the things that in colder, more moist climates will attack your vines and destroy your harvest. So Solaris is quite good at protecting itself against UK climate and Eastern European climate. This particular wine is from the border of Poland and Germany, a place called Baniawice, which is really, I guess, not what you'd expect coming out of Poland. It's a botrytized wine, so it uses Botrytis cinerea, that fungus which causes noble rot. It's a fungus that grows naturally on the grape. It wants all the sugar inside, so it shoots its little tendrils through the skin, puncturing the skin, and starts sucking all that sugar out. And I guess naturally you would think, slightly counterintuitively, if this fungus is sucking out of the sugar, surely my final grape should not be sweet. In the perfect regions, which cannot happen everywhere in the world, it can only happen in really specific niche regions, really sunny mornings and moist environments will mean this perfect balance of keeping botrytis before it destroys your vineyards. So those sunny mornings are what you really need to blitz through your vineyard, to kill all of the fungus that has grown and punctured your grape. And once they're all decimated and you've just got this powdery mess of botrytis fungus around your grape, all of the moisture and all the water within that grape will start to evaporate. The next night, you've got more fungus, and the next morning, it's decimated and you evaporate. And that process will continue, and that cycle will happen on a daily basis till towards the end of your harvest, your grape is really sort of shriveled. It's covered in this powdery fungus, this old botrytis cinerea that's just been decimated, which you can actually feel in your wine, but you're left with really concentrated sugars, really sweet, ripe grapes with this sort of powdery layer of dead fungus. And when you make your wine, you're left with a phenomenal amount of additional sugar in the mix and the fungus to give you those flavors that are really unique and specific to botrytized or noble rot induced wines. This particular one, super tropical.
Is there any other method of making sweet wines?
Loads of other methods. I think you covered 3 already. Thank you, Martin. So this is using botrytis, which is your fungus. The Malamado was fortified, which is one method, and late harvest is another. On the top of my head, I can probably name 4, but I'm guessing we don't have too much time to cover that in this session. But back to our Shetny Jbior, really beautiful high acidity. It's got the high sugars and the high acidity, so it's so easy drinking. All tropical fruit. It's a beautiful number. I would compare it to some of your better Sauternes, but without the crazy price tag on it. Guys, those are my 3 sweet wines that we've covered. I hope you've enjoyed the sessions as a whole. If you're ever in South London, come pay us a visit in Elephant and Castle. And if you ever need wine, our shop is open and available to you online, and come in person if you need to. It's been a pleasure having you all, and we'll see you soon. Take care and stay safe. Ciao, ciao.